Yeah, it's going in.
No, please.
The Plastic Pontoon Boat Buyer's Guide. We've been making a lot of John boat videos, but I absolutely love my pontoon boat. I have the Pond Prowler 10, fully modified. We have a ton of videos on it, and make sure you like and subscribe because tomorrow morning I'm actually going to take it back out into the bayou. We're going to go hunt for some redfish, and I've not made a Pond Prowler fishing video in a while, so I'm really excited to bust that back out. And make sure you stay tuned to the end of today's video because I screen recorded a bunch of plastic pontoon boat listings, and we're going to kind of quickly analyze why it's a good deal, why it's a fair deal, or why it's a rip-off bad deal, as well as some things you can't really come back from once you make that purchase. And lastly, I highly recommend that you join my Facebook group, Tiny Boat Talk. It's growing very quickly every day, but what I usually do is I post really good deals, which I'm always doing for the plastic pontoon boats and the John boats. Anytime I find something nationwide that's a really good deal, I make sure to post it in the group, let everybody know. And a lot of people like to post what they're looking to buy. Not their boats yet, but maybe they join the group and they're going to make a post saying, hey, I saw this, and what do you guys think of it? So it's a really good place for you guys to send boats you're looking at for the community to view, and they can tell you, hey, this is a good buy or this is bad. And of course, I'm in there personally giving some advice. All right, let's get into it and let's talk about some of the things that you need to think about before you buy your plastic pontoon boat. Number one is going to be what size do you want? Now, when I say plastic pontoon boats, I'm talking about the Pond Prowlers, the Quest Anglers, the Bass Raiders, all these different type of formats. And they're all basically the same. Some have little nuances, but that's not what this video is about. In general, these are everything you need to look at. And number one is size. Now, generally, these come in two sizes. The 10-foot with 2 seats, or the 8-foot with 1 seat. And generally, the 8-foot is a 1-person boat, and the Pond Prowler is a 2-person boat. So you need to figure out what you want, and number 2 is going to be a place to store it, and maybe this might make a difference for you when picking a size. Personally, I would always go with the 10. I mostly take the Prowler out by myself, and I just love having that extra 2 feet. And if I have another person on board, we have plenty of room and it's no big deal. A lot of people get the 8-foot, they go out, they have fun, they post on social media, they tell their wives, they tell their buddies or whatever, they say, hey, I'd love to go out with you. And yes, you can take 2 people on the 8-foot. You can buy another seat, but the seats are like $120. So save yourself the headache, spend a little bit more money, and just get the 10-foot. There's no reason not to unless you're going to top it on the top of your car or you really have no space to store anything. But generally, I would just recommend the 10-foot. Okay, number 2 is a place to store it. I don't like storing these in the sun, in the rain, and anything like that. I like to store them inside, whether it's a garage, inside of a storage unit where I keep all my boats or anything like that. You can tarp it, leave it on the side of the house. But the second thing you're going to need to consider is, do you have a place to store it? It sounds simple, but I bought my first 9.4-foot water tender with no place to put it. I lived in an apartment complex. I bought a boat. I had no place to put it. So it's just, hey, some people don't think about it. Number 3 is a way to haul it. Now, you can put these 10 to 8-footers on the top of cars with the proper roof rack. It's a pain. These boats are not heavy, but they're not light. If you're trying to lift them above your head onto a car, it's not all that much fun, but they can fit in cargo vans. They can fit in truck beds, even small truck beds. Mine lays perfectly flat in mine, and I think it might overhang the tailgate by, maybe a foot or so. Personally, I really like the trailering method, whether you use a jet ski trailer or a utility trailer or just a small little flatbed trailer. There's a lot of different options, but you're going to want to figure out, how am I going to haul it? Do I want to lift it on my car? Do I want to lift it from the water up into my truck bed? Or do I want to slip it off on a trailer? That's something major to consider. And it's going to matter because it's going to affect your search. Should I be searching for just the boat? Or should I be searching for a boat and trailer combo? Or should I factor into my budget a boat and a trailer? That leads us into the 4th thing you need to look at before you start buying, and that is determine your budget. How much do you want to spend? The prices can vary greatly. If you're getting a boat that's 2 years old with no mods, with no motor, with no battery, literally just bought from the showroom floor, used it, and that's the product that they're selling 2 years later, that's going to be a cheaper boat. That's going to be a $600 boat right there. Maybe even $500 if they bought it 800 new and it's a 10-foot. But the thing is a lot of folks like to mod the crap out of them partially thanks to this channel because we do a ton of Pond Prowler mods. And in fact, our boat is basically finished besides an outboard. So think about it. Are you going to want to buy a boat that is just as cheap as humanly possible? Or are you going to want to spend a little bit more and get a good deal with some already done mods? For example, I bought my boat. It's an absolute steal, I know, but I bought it for $300. We're going to talk about why it was so cheap here in a little bit in the next section. Actually, it's going to be the next thing we talk about, but I bought my boat for $300. It came with 2 aftermarket seats, which I still use, those gray and white ones, extremely comfortable. It came with 2 bow handles, so I can pull it up onto the trailer and have a point to kind of mount it to my utility trailer. And it came with a paddle and a paddle clip. I also bought the battery and trolling motor for an additional $80. So I spent $380 for a modified Pond Prowler with a motor and a battery, water ready. Less than $400. Pretty awesome. So do you want to spend, $300? Do you want to spend $500? Or you can spend up to $3,000 on these things if they come with a trailer, they're modded out with electronics, and they have an outboard. You can spend what you want on these boats. Think about your budget and what you want. My trailer came separately later after I was doing a bunch of launches and loads from the bed of my truck, which is totally possible. All right, we've covered everything that you need to think about before you buy the boat. Now let's talk about the search itself. And the number one thing you need to look for, and probably the biggest deal, is registration. I can't register my Pond Prowler. It's a long story. Registered out of state. Someone that sold it to me didn't even own it. It was their uncle's, and they didn't have the original registration that the Florida DMV wanted. It's a whole thing, but it's a lesson learned. Now, here's the thing. It doesn't matter what Google says. Read up on your updated state laws, because in general, they treat these plastic tiny boats just like any other boat. In fact, they treat, in a lot of places, a kayak with a trolling motor just like a regular boat, which means here in Florida, I'm going to need a bill of sale and I'm going to need a title to these boats, because when I registered my John boat, I now have a title just like a regular boat. So you're going to have to read up on your state laws and make sure the boat was registered. And if it hasn't been registered ever, that is not necessarily a bad thing, because then in the state of Florida, all you need is a bill of sale to register it for the first time. But if it has been registered before, especially out of state like mine was, you need to communicate and figure out, because not every state requires the same stuff. There's a lot of states that don't require titles, but Florida does. So, it can get complicated, and there's things that you can do about it. But I made a full-length video on this channel all about registering these tiny boats and kayaks as well for used and new. So that has been a great resource for a lot of folks that have a lot of questions about this. But make sure it has a good title, or at least has everything you need to register it in your state. All right, next, we're going to be looking for hull damage. Now, you might be getting some screaming deals, but take a look at this dented pontoon boat. So this boat is dented. The owner says, of course, it still floats, it doesn't leak, it doesn't affect the performance. But why would you start off the bat with something that's damaged, a weak point, a failure point? Because ideally, you're going to want to be using these boats. You're going to want to use them for what they're meant for. You can run up shallow. I pull mine over the bank and I used to load it into my truck and all that sorts of stuff. So why would you risk having a plastic boat that has a giant crater in it that could just bust or anything weird happen to it? Look for hull damage. Are there any deep gouges or scrapes under the pontoons? Anything like that. I highly recommend just looking through it, making sure there's nothing in the listing, nothing like that, and seriously inspect it when you get there. Don't spend all this time and money buying a boat with weak points. Flip that sun gun upside down and look at its tunes. Look at its undercarriage. Everything, inspect it, because they are plastic. These are not bulletproof. They're very strong. It is very strong plastic, but that doesn't mean you can't get a serious gouge that could go any second, and that's why they're selling the boat for cheap. Definitely flip the boat over and look all around for hull damage. Okay, here's another one. Big deal. Sidewall seal damage. That little rubber piece that kind of rivets the 2 plastic holes together with the foam and the wood inside. Yeah, make sure that is intact, because first of all, that rubber seal is not exactly watertight. It's water resistant, but sometimes over time, water still will build up and get through there. It's not a perfect seal. So if it has damage, you can guarantee you're going to take on more water than usual. Now, here's why I'm bringing this up. One, it's fairly common. Someone's pulling it or rubs up against the trailer or they crash or for whatever reason the rubber seal breaks. I've never had this issue on all three of the plastic boats that I've used. Never had this issue at all. But sometimes, during transportation, even to the store, I have seen multiple people buy from department stores, get home, look around it, and realize underneath on the rubber seal, one part was totally busted off. And then you can see just two pieces of plastic just like that where water can, well, I gotta watch what I'm doing there, but water can get right through in between the two split hole pieces. So definitely make sure that the rubber seal around it is all intact. This is not the end of the world. This is fairly easy to seal, but it's something to keep in mind. All right, the next thing that once you're actually there and you need to do is lift it. You need to make sure it is not waterlogged. This is something that can easily go under the radar. You don't see it. You don't always hear it. Sometimes when you move it around, you can hear water in the tunes. That's no problem. Pull the drain plugs on the front of both of them, tip it up from the stern, and then watch the water drain out. But the big problem is prolonged periods of water in the tunes that have allowed the foam inside to soak it up, making it waterlogged, even though you don't hear it sloshing around. You can lift it and be like, okay, this boat weighs about 136 pounds. Just as is. If I lift it up here and it feels like I'm trying to do, a deadlift or something here, if something does not seem like it, because at the end of the day, it should not take that much effort to lift the bow of the boat up. But if you do and it feels like it's really heavy, you might have a waterlogged boat. Now, there are things that you can do with this, including leaving the pontoon drain plugs out, tilting it up on a tree in the sun, and kind of letting it slowly evaporate out. You can also split the hull, which I don't usually recommend. Some of the hardcore enthusiasts who do a lot of mods split the hull either to dry it out if they have no other option or to do electrical work, which is honestly probably something that I would like to do one of these days. But make sure it's not waterlogged. It's going to make you go through the water slower. It is going to reduce your weight capacity. It is also going to just simply make it so much harder to put it on your car, in your van, in your truck bed, or even on your trailer. Mine is kind of heavy, but I have an older model, so my foam is probably soaked up a little bit of water, but it's not too bad. I can put it in the bed of my truck, no problem. But the foam is marine grade foam. It's not designed to soak it up, but if you get an older boat or something goes wrong, it's just flat out prolonged periods of too much water in the tunes, it still happens and your boat can still be waterlogged. So watch out for that. Lift it up, slosh it around, see what happens. Not the end of the world, but why would you want a boat that weighs twice as much and immediately off the bat cuts down your weight capacity? All right, next is a solid transom. Now, this isn't that big of a deal. These boats are only rated for 3.5 horses on the stern transom mount, and I believe 40-pound thrust on the bow, which I have over 40-pound thrust. Not really that big of a deal. But it's still worth checking because there is a little piece of wood in the stern transom where the outboard goes between the metal plates. So just grab it, move it around. It's going to flex. It's always going to flex. It's plastic. It's not a solid piece of wood. It's going to move. But if you kind of feel it going creaking and cracking like it's starting to break or it's rotting, that's something that you want to stay away from because, I've seen people put, I'll recommend you put up to a 5 horse on it. You can go higher than that if you do a transom support build, which you can absolutely do. But you don't want to buy a boat, get it on there, put a 3.5 on it, and your transom is just starting to give. You don't want that. You don't want it to be soft, and then the clamps become loose, and then the motor falls in. It's not a very common issue I see with these boats, but it's definitely worth checking. All right, next, make sure it has a legible HIN or hull identification number. Now, your registration forms, your title, all that stuff will have it on there. But, if you buy a used boat that has never been registered and you get your bill of sale and you walk up in there and you realize, hey, I can't read this HIN. They're known for kind of fading away, flat out falling off, or just being unreadable. So make sure you have the HIN for multiple reasons. Hopefully you never really need it, but, you also need a way to prove that this is actually your boat, even though you haven't registered to you. So definitely make sure that you have a legible HIN, or at the very least, know what it is on some sort of paperwork so you can replace it, or just simply know what the number is down the road. Last, finally, just make sure it's generally structurally sound. So we've tested the transom, we've moved it all around, we've checked the pontoons, but once you get inside the boat, make sure the floor doesn't feel like you're just gonna flat out fall through. My floor, gives a little bit. Of course, it's plastic, but on the side where the cup holders are and the flat parts where I have all my foam, I can put my full body weight up on there. Not only not flip the boat, but there's really no give. There's a little bit of a creak, but it's all foam inside of there. So if you start putting a bunch of weight, you're sitting down or even standing up and you start leaning on, I kick the camera, leaning on where the cup holders are, and it just totally buckles like it's just nothing but plastic in there. Yeah, don't buy that boat. You want to make sure it can actually doesn't have to support your weight. I'm a pretty light guy. I'm only about 150, 160. So I can put my full body weight on it without caving it in at all. But that flat piece on the bow with the trolling motor, that little tray up there, that should also still be able to support my entire body weight standing up on it. As you guys saw in the stability test, I was walking the entire perimeter and it's rock solid. Nothing gave, nothing fell through, nothing even dented. So make sure the whole boat is structurally sound. Push up on the edges. Now it's going to flex. Oops, the side of the boat is going to go like this. It is plastic. It's not rock solid, of course. It is flexible. But just make sure nothing feels like it's, bending too much. The plastic is weak, sun faded, or maybe it froze and unfroze too many times and it's brittle. Just generally make sure it's structurally sound. All right, finally, let's hop into the computer and we'll analyze just a few really quick deals to kind of get the wheels turning. Don't forget to join the Tiny Boat Facebook group so that way, or the Tiny Boat Talk Facebook group, so that way you can send your deals our way and then we can look at it and say, hey, this is a good deal or this is not, and you can take advantage of me posting any good deals I find while browsing Marketplace. All right, here we have a $300 option, what I paid for my boat, except this is the Pond Prowler 90. This is a very old model that you can tell, but for $300 it's not bad. The seller says it's in good condition, but I can't help but notice that it is registered, which is totally fine, but it doesn't have the registration year, which means maybe something along the lines happened. Overall, not for me, even though it's only $300. Some of you might jump on it, but I want something a little bit newer. All right, moving on, we have a Bass Hunter for $700 with a motor, with seats, and a trailer. Now, this is pretty awesome. It is only $700. They say it's in like new condition. This is definitely worth sending them a message. This is one of the most desirable versions of these as they're only one piece and don't take on water. Super robust with the trailer, man, and a paddle, some extra accessories. I would jump all over this for only $700. Now let's move on to the 8-foot for $700. And although it says used like new, there is a big catch. First of all, he's selling it for $700 for a used Prowler with one of those $100 Minn Kotas on there. So it's not that good of a deal, but wait for the humdinger, baby. You flip it upside down and you find a dent, you find a crater. I don't know about you, but that is a hard pass in my book, especially at that price. That is a bad deal. I would buy that for probably $300. All right, moving on, we have the Pond Prowler 2-person boat. This is another older model, and they want $2,300 for an old model. It does come with a trailer, but it does have spot lock. Personally, for this particular boat, I'm not going to pay $2,300 for it. I could get this older model for $300 like the previous listing we saw, buy a used version of that iPilot or whatever it is with the spot lock. Looks like it's a motor guide. Plus a cheap $300-$400 jet ski trailer. You could get the same setup, even newer, for probably less money or at the very least the same money. So I'm going to pass on that. All right, now we have a like new Pond Prowler 8 for only $450. It is the modern version. It looks to be in great condition, and it does not look to be registered. So a bill of sale should get it done. I can't help but notice they did add a bow eye, so you can put it on a trailer. This is a great buy. I would love $450 for that. That'd be absolutely awesome. All right, now we have another pontoon, the Pond Prowler 10-foot for $2,200. Supposed to be in good condition, but it does come with one of those cheap Harbor Freight kind of, trailers and a 2.5 outboard. So it's not the worst deal in the world, but $2,200 is pretty steep. I would say this is a fair deal. I don't know if I would jump on this one personally, but it is a pretty fair deal if you do want an outboard and a trailer and not have to really worry about it. All right, this is a $400 old school Pond Prowler. And you might be thinking, hey, I don't mind that it's old. It's a good price. It seems to be the 10-foot model, but it comes with no seats. The seats are about $120 a piece. After taxes and shipping, you're going to be spending an extra $300 to have a super old version of the Pond Prowler without the more modern designs. And I'm not actually convinced this is a Pond Prowler, but anyway, yeah, I don't know. I'd pass on that. Now, $2,500 for the Pond Prowler 8 and trailer. That is pretty crazy. Yeah, it's, $650 hull, $100 motor, $200 trailer. I don't know where they're getting the $2,500 number from. It is registered, looks to be in really good condition. I'd pay $1,500 for that. Maybe not even that much. $2,500 is steep. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is all I have for you. This is the complete buyer's guide to the plastic pontoons. Definitely stick around and watch all the videos I have of me fishing off of it, including tomorrow. We're going to go hunt for some redfish in the flats and the bayou, as well as a ton of other fun tiny boat content. Join the Tiny Boat Talk Facebook group to send us your deals and show us what you got. Thanks for hanging out. See you next time.